The movie begins in Tarascon, France, in 1956, when a boy named Jacques comes to the church, and Father Noah asks him to bring wine. They then perform their daily chores at a church, after which Jacques goes back to the basement to keep the wine, but when he turns back, he sees a football there. He kicks the ball toward a dark room, and when he hears a faint sound coming from there, he starts moving in that direction. Suddenly, the bottle breaks, which causes Jacques to run away in fear and tell Father that someone is there. Only then do they hear noise coming from the church, so they go in to investigate, and Father says, whoever he is, and whatever the reason for him coming, he is in the house of God, and he is watching him. Suddenly, two eyes shine in the dark, and Noah is raised into the air, set on fire, and burned to death, all while Jacques watches as he holds on to the priest's rosary. We then see Sister Irene, who now lives a reclusive life in Italy. The Mother Superior tells her that Deborah causes trouble every day, and that today she even refused to go to confession. Irene then goes to Sister Deborah, where Deborah tells her that her family is from Mississippi, but when she was 4 years old, white people found them and burned their house. After that, her brothers joined the army, and her dad felt since his sons were serving the country, why shouldn't his daughter serve God? Later, the Mother Superior tells all the nuns the story of the Church of Saint Carta, about how a demon brutally killed the nuns there one by one, and to break their faith, he took their form. After this, the Vatican sent a priest and a nun to kill the demon. They stopped him by using the blood of Jesus, and both of them returned victorious. The priest was then made a bishop, and no one knows what happened to the nun. We then see Maurice, who works in a boarding school in France, where he has made friends with a young Irish girl named Sophie, as well as a teacher and her mother, Kate. Later, Sophie gives him a friendship bracelet she made for him, but a girl snatches the bracelet and starts making fun of Sophie, and when Maurice asks her to give it back, she says she will not because he is just a servant. Maurice tells her that despite being a servant, he knows that they should treat everyone with love and respect. At that moment, Madame Lauren comes in and asks everyone to go to their classes, and tells Maurice that there are cockroaches in her room again, to which Maurice leaves, saying that he will go and check it out right away. Later, a delivery girl goes to the boarding room to deliver groceries. She goes back after storing some goods in the storeroom. When she hears a strange sound, she goes inside to confirm her suspicions and finds Maurice acting strange. When she asks him if he's okay, he suddenly looks at her, causing her to collapse in fear. After this, she encounters the demon nun, stricken with fear, to which she tries to escape, but the door closes and the nun kills her by breaking her neck. If you enjoyed the chills so far, and you're receiving value from this video, smash that like button to help the channel reach a larger audience. Let's get back to the movie. Later that night, Mother Superior tells Irene that someone has come to meet her. Hearing this, she leaves from there, and when Irene comes down, she is shocked to see Maurice there. He yells for her to save him and turns into a demon, and suddenly Irene wakes up from her sleep. The next day, Cardinal comes to meet her, tells her that some unexplained incidents have happened. A 90-year-old nun shot herself on the steps of a church in a village in Hungary. A priest slit his throat with a rosary at Christmas Mass in Austria, and a girl who had become a nun in Italy hanged herself. He tells her that according to the pattern, the demon is moving westward into Europe, but its roots are linked to Romania. She asks them if they talked to Father Berg, to which Cardinal says he is dead, and now she is the only one left who has faced that devil, so the church wants her to investigate. Irene says she won't do it because she almost died in Saint Carta, to which Cardinal says that in that alley she did a miracle and the church needs another miracle. Now, while Irene travels to Tarascon, Sister Deborah joins her without her permission. Irene gets angry at her and asks why she has accompanied her, to which she tells her that she wants to believe in miracles. But when she hears a priest saying that they changed the wine into the blood of Jesus, it becomes difficult to believe. Irene says that wine becomes the blood of Jesus when they believe, and in their religion, all extraordinary things have come true only because of their faith. Meanwhile, Sophie's classmates make some excuse and bring her to the abandoned chapel, where Madame had forbidden them from going to. Once in, they tell her that they will play a game called Defy the Devil. Sophie says she doesn't see any devil, to which she says the devil is always here, but she is not paying attention. She then tells her that the devil is watching her, so whatever she does, no matter what she hears, don't turn around. Now, when Sophie's attention is on a painting in front of her, three girls leave her there alone, and after some time, when she realizes this, she runs to get out, but the girls lock her inside. Sophie asks them to open the door, but then she hears a noise from behind her and sees a statue covered with a white cloth. The statue starts moving towards her, and she sees a glimpse of the nun, and only then does Maurice open the door. She comes out of the chapel frightened, and Maurice asks her what happened. He then asks the girls if they think it's funny, and they all get scared and run away from there. Later, Irene and Deborah reach Tarascon, where a nun welcomes them and tells them that Mass is still held here, but no one comes. People think that the devil comes here, and they say that their church is now cursed. Irene senses the devil's presence here, and then the door of the church opens and Jacques comes to her. He gives her a burned rosary, and only then Deborah asks her if he is okay. They then visit Father Noah's room, and Irene asks her if there was a boy here that night. The nun says yes, and she saw everything, but her mother does not want her to talk about this to anyone. Irene asks her if anyone else was in the church at that time, to which she tells her that there was a helper there who left the day after the accident. He come from Romagna, and the people there called him Frenchy. When they both come out of the church, Deborah asks her about Frenchy, to which she tells her that his name is Maurice and that he was their guide in Saint Carta. When she was possessed by Satan, he came back for her to save her. She realizes that this is how the demon survived, and he is doing all this through Maurice. Meanwhile, Kate thanks Maurice for saving Sophie from those girls. He asks her why that chapel is kept closed, to which she tells him that Madame's son, Cedric, died there during the bombings. She then leaves, and Sophie, who was watching Maurice from the window, notices him standing at one point looking up. Only then Kate calls her, and when she goes in that direction, she sees her mother going up the stairs. She follows her upstairs, where she encounters the demonic nun, who suddenly sends crows at her and disappears. Sophie gets scared and starts going downstairs, where the nun appears before her again, but then Kate comes there with all the students, and Sophie sees Nun's figure on the wall. Later, Irene and Deborah visit a hotel they booked for their stay, but the receptionist tells them that their name is not registered. Deborah stops to talk to the manager, and Irene comes outside when some kids run by, when a boy stops to tie his shoelaces. Irene notices that he is Jacques, so she goes over to him and tells him that her name is Irene and that the church has sent her to help. She asks him if he had the rosary with him that night, to which he says that it was Father Noah's, and he took it because he was very scared. Only then do the children return, and Jacques leaves with them, and when Irene goes after them, they all disappear, and she becomes shocked to see this. After some time, she sees Jacques again, and after following him, she ends up in front of a magazine store. After this, the pages of those magazines start turning automatically, to which an image of the nun is formed on them. Irene gets scared seeing this, and she hears some noise from behind her, but she does not see anyone there. She turns back and starts moving towards the figure, and suddenly the demonic nun attacks her, causing her to have a vision where she sees a man gouging out the eyes of a nun. She then sees the same nun in front of her with a box in her hands, and as her eyes shine, we see Irene lying there unconscious. Meanwhile, Madame Lauren encounters a possessed Maurice, who stands facing the chapel's door, and when she approaches him, he turns around scared, asks him what he is doing. He says that he doesn't know. Now, after he leaves, she hears her son calling her from behind that door, and then someone tries to open the door. Madame opens the lock and goes inside to investigate, and she is shocked to see Cedric there. Suddenly, Nun's hand comes on his shoulder, and he starts attacking Madame, causing a hook to fall on her, and she dies. The next day, when Irene regains consciousness, Deborah asks her what happened late last night. Irene tells her that she saw a vision, and now she knows what the devil wants, and he is using Maurice to find it, and once he finds it, he will kill him. Deborah tells her that Jacques came to her when she was unconscious and gave her a rosary. Irene checks it and says she has seen this mark somewhere but can't remember where. Deborah says she saw it in a photo of one of the demon's victims and thinks there is a connection. Meanwhile, Kate finds Madame's dead body in the chapel and is shocked to see it. Later, the police take away Madame's body, and Kate tells Maurice that Sophie cannot be found, to which he asks her not to worry because he will find her. Now, after searching for some time, he finally finds Sophie and sits there with her to talk to her. Sophie says that Madame never used to go to the chapel, and she feels that there is something wrong with this school. Maurice asks her if she saw or heard anything, to which she says no, she just feels this way. Irene and Devil travel to police depots, and they show the rosary to the librarian. He tells them them that the emblem on the rosary is the family crest of Saint Lucy. Knowing this, Irene remembers that vision and says that she knows the demon wants those eyes. He then tells them that when Lucy was killed by infidels, her family somehow escaped. They spread everywhere in the world and started protecting their secret with all their might, a sacred relic, the eyes of Saint Lucy. Deborah asks him what the demon will do to her eyes, to which he says that he does not know, but the devil they are talking about now was earlier an angel who was rejected by God and took away his powers. Irene says he wants his powers back, to which he says that the demon is infinite and that's why he has been killing her family since the time of Saint Lucy. He tells Irene that this time she will have to use those eyes to send that demon back to hell. Irene says they do not know where the relic is, to which he tells her that it had reached a monk named Jean-Paul Ritter, and he had written a letter to the Vatican telling them that he had buried those eyes somewhere in the monastery, which is an hour away from there. That monastery was later sold to a wine company, but now it is a boarding school. Now, going back to the school, Irene tells Deborah that her mother was very religious and said that God himself spoke to her and gave her visions, but her father did not believe her and said that she was crazy and ungodly. Once her father took her to a doctor, and then one day the doctor's helpers took her away. After that, she never saw her again. Meanwhile, something starts happening to Maurice while he is with Sophie and Kate, and she notices that inverted cross on his neck. The nun then appears to Sophie, and seeing her, they all get terrified, and Maurice tries to run away with them. Meanwhile, Irene and Deborah make it there, and Maurice gets surprised to see her and tells her that he has returned. He tells Kate and Sophie that she is Irene and that she will help them, but Irene tells him to move away from them. She then tells him that the demon is inside of him, but Maurice doesn't believe it. However, he is then taken over by the demon and begins leaving there, and when Irene goes after him, he attacks and pushes her away. Deborah tries to stop him, but he pushes her away too. Now Irene orders him in the name of God to leave this man's body, causing him to weaken and fall down, and then Deborah hits and knocks him unconscious. They then tie him up with a rope, after which they go to the chapel with Kate and Sophie, and Irene tells them that she is looking for a relic that was hidden there by a monk. Sophie tells them that the goat is the devil, and when sunlight hits the window, the goat's eyes turn red. Deborah goes out and from the other side uses a flashlight to make the eyes of the goat on the mosaic glow red. The red light points in the direction of where the eyes of Saint Lucy are buried, and they start digging at that place. Only then does Sophie notice that the goat has disappeared from the mosaic, but she doesn't tell it to anyone, and during this, they also get Saint Lucy's eyes. Meanwhile, Deborah finds a very frightened girl who tells her that she thinks there is someone up there. Deborah points her flashlight upstairs where she sees a demon goat that begins to move towards the girl, but before he can reach her, Deborah saves her and locks her in the dorm. Demon begins banging on the door, after which an invisible force starts picking up and throwing the girls. Hearing their screams, Kate starts going towards the dorm, but then Maurice comes there and pushes her away. After this, he pounces on Irene, due to which the relic falls from her hands, and he is about to kill Irene when Sophie runs away with the relic, and Maurice leaves Irene and starts chasing her. Here, Deborah saves all the girls and hides in another room. They try to enter Madame's room through a vent, but one girl gets scared to see Madame there and tells everyone else that Madame is standing in her room. Suddenly, Madame grabs her head and starts pulling her inside, and when they all try to save her, the girl sees the cockroaches are coming out of Madame's mouth. Meanwhile, Sophie is hiding in the bell tower and Maurice is searching for her, and the relic starts glowing, due to which Maurice finds her, but because of the relic he is unable to do anything to her, and Sophie gets the chance to escape. He starts chasing her, but the bell tower building collapses and Irene rushes in to save Sophie. We then see that Sophie was saved, but then the wooden plank starts falling apart but gets stuck because of a rope. Then suddenly Maurice also appears there, and as soon as he catches Sophie, the rope also opens, causing Maurice to fall down. Irene comes inside the building looking for Sophie and finds her there, and she tells her that she has those eyes. Maurice then gets up again, but Irene uses the relic against him, causing his eyes and nose to bleed. He requests her to stop, saying he will die, and then he falls. They think he is dead, and Irene starts crying, remembering the moment she spent with him, but he suddenly snatches the relic from her hand, which starts burning in his hand, and as the demon gets his powers back, his eyes begin glowing. The demon in Nun's form appears there, and on the other hand, the demonic goat appears and charges the girls, but they manage to enter the chapel and try to stop him by closing the door. Meanwhile, the nun strangles Deborah with a chain, and when Irene goes to save her, Sophie tries to escape but finds the nun on both ends. The nun then lifts Irene in the air and sets her on fire, but she does not burn, as it is revealed that she is a descendant of Saint Lucy. She then falls on the wine on the floor, and the demon gets furious seeing this. It's Irene aside and tells her it was a miracle. Irene sees the wine spilling on the grounds, and only then she hears Sophie scream and rushes to save her. The demon traps Sophie, and then Maurice approaches her with a knife, but Maurice stops himself from killing her. Seeing this, Irene asks Deborah to pray with her, and she turns the wine into Jesus' blood, causing the Valak to get burned and return to hell. And this is where the movie ends. Thanks for joining me on my horror movie recap adventure. Drop a comment to share your favorite scene from the movie and keep the terror alive. Stay spooky, and I hope to see you in the next video.